right. Buenos días. Good morning. Bienvenidos. Welcome. In the interest of time, I want to go ahead and get started with our conversación today. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen so you all can see our slides, and then we'll also place the slides in the chat so that you have access to them. So let me go here, and I get a thumbs up that people can see the slides. Perfect. Perfecto. Bueno, pues buenos días. Welcome to our conversación for today, Empoderando Nuestras Voces, Navigating Being Bilingual and Bicultural Graduate Students and Counseling Trainees. I am Dr. Olga Mejia, and I am Director of the Animo Latinx Counseling Emphasis, and my pronouns are she, her, ella, and we'll each introduce ourselves briefly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Vargas. I use the pronouns she, her, y ella.
Hi, I'm Paola Acosta. I use the pronouns she, her, ella.
Hi, I'm Tamara Solano. My pronouns are she, her, ella.
Hi, my name is Leslie Alvarez, and my pronouns are she, her, ella.
Hi, everyone. My name is Valeria Ayala. Pronouns she, her, ella as well.
Perfecto. Gracias. Gracias. And so, as we get started, I want to just invite all of you. First of all, thank you for joining us this morning, and invite you to just, if you'll indulge us, to sit comfortably wherever you're at. And if we can just take a few 3 short breaths together, kind of deep breaths. And as you do that, if you will be open to what you're about to hear today, notice your thoughts, notice your feelings, notice your reactions. In what ways are you connecting to the information? So as you are feeling grounded, if you can take a deep breath in, and slowly breathe out. Again, breathing in. Slowly breathing out at your own pace. And again, taking a deep breath in. And slowly breathing out at your own pace. So we want to, with that, to do some brief introductions of our work as we get started. First things first, we want to give a land acknowledgement for our presenters. We are located at Cal State Fullerton, and so wanted to let you know that CSUF is on unceded lands of the Tongva and Accoman Indigenous Peoples. We want to give a resource. Again, you'll have access to this PDF. There is an amazing guide on that first link on how not to just give land acknowledgements, but to go beyond that. And so you have a couple of resources and links there. I also, rather than just giving an acknowledgement, I want to also talk about what actions we are taking within our program, within Animo, and that we're integrating issues of Indigenous peoples into our curriculum. We are also taking the time to learn about the history of Indigenous peoples in Latin America. That's really important as part of our history, and also as part of that reclaiming and honoring our Indigenous roots. And really encourage you to go look at that slide and that first, the first link. There is a guidebook on ways that maybe you can take actions. And here I've included, a suggestion of donating time and money to Indigenous-led organizations, and also attend demonstrations to support Native communities. Okay. And now I'll move on to Paola, who will share about our learning objectives.
So we hope you all take into consideration the learning objectives as we move through the presentation. The first one is to create consciousness raising about the training needs of bilingual and bicultural graduate students and counseling trainees. The second one is to highlight the process of graduate students finding their voice, evolving their bilingual and bicultural identity, and becoming empowered to advocate for themselves and the Latinx community. Last but not least is to also provide an effective recommendations for improving training for bilingual and bicultural counselors and overall mental health services to the Latinx community.
Gracias, Paola. All right, y también en forma de introducir, right, we want to let you know quiénes somos, right, who are we? We really believe it's important for us to be transparent about our salient intersecting identities, just so that you can contextualize the information that you're about to hear from us. Okay, so Carla, you want to get us started?
Of course. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Carla Vargas, and I use the pronoun she, her, ella. I am a second-generation graduate student. I am a Latinx female, and I am a recent graduate of my master's in counseling at CSUF.
Hola, I'm Paola, pronouns she, her, ella, and I am a first-generation Latina woman, a bilingual and bicultural counselor, and a sister and daughter of immigrants.
So I am Leslie. I am also a first-gen grad student. I identify as Chicana and a cisgender woman. I'm also the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and I'm in my second year at this grad program.
Hola, yo soy Tamara. I'm a neurodivergent Latina and a first-gen grad student.
Hi everyone, my name is Valeria, pronouns she, her, ella, and I'm a first-generation Latina college student and also from Mexican immigrants.
Y por último, yo, I am an Indigenous identified Mexican immigrant. My first language is Spanish. I'm a cisgender woman. I also grew up low income status, and currently I'm a faculty member at CSUF. Okay. So if this will let me, there we go. Okay, so want to give you a bit shortly about our theoretical background and then tell you a little bit about our program, the Ánimo Latinx Counseling Emphasis, which we are all a part of. Our theoretical background, liberation psychology, intersectionality, and cultural responsiveness theories. And so briefly, what we mean by that is that we center oppression experienced by poor and marginalized communities. With that, we really focus on strength-based perspectives. We work to actively change and resist white supremacist, oppressive, and discriminatory systems such as racism, patriarchy, capitalism, homophobia, and transphobia, etc. Okay, and also wanted to give you a bit of context of why Ánimo, the Ánimo program, is important. As you may know, being in the mental health field, there are very limited training programs that do this work. And Ánimo is meant to meet the need that is currently there, that there is a critical shortage of bilingual and bicultural counselors, right, to meet the mental health needs of the Latinx community. And, you know, along with that, that there are very few training programs to do this work. I think that often in the field, it's assumed that if someone is bilingual and bicultural, that you'll automatically know how to do therapy or do counseling in Spanish. And that's not true, right? That yes, it is essential to be bilingual and bicultural, but also there needs to be specific training programs that help you to do this work. And that's what Animo is doing. So part of the Animo Latinx counseling emphasis, oficialmente empezamos en el otoño del 2018. So we just accepted our incoming sixth class this fall. We train culturally responsive and bilingüe terapeutas. We center Indigenous healing, empowerment, and advocacy. The program is embedded within a larger program of it's a 63 unit program, but Animo itself is 5 graduate level courses, and the courses are taught in Español and Inglés y en Spanglish también. I'm really mindful of, we are very mindful of infusing Latinx cultural valores such as familismo, personalismo, and colectivismo into all of the work that we do. Certainly being in these larger systems that we are in, Animo, we have faced and continue to face and manage many institutional barriers. And we navigate them the best that we can, but also focus on strength and moving forward. Part of our logros that I want to share with you all, successes, right, is this our research lab. Those of us that are presenting with you, we're part of the Animo Research Lab. We have a student association that started fall of 2020. We have new faculty, new tenure track faculty. By the fall of 24, there'll be 4 tenure track faculty that are designated to teach in Animo. We're doing a lot more fundraising, giving media recognition. So really excited about for our successes that we've had recently. We've also been received some awards and recognitions. One of the 2 more salient ones is through Excelencia in Education has recognized us as a program to watch and as a finalist for this year. So a program to watch in 2022 and a finalist for 2023, and also recognized through WASES. And so then I want to now move on to Leslie Ann.
Hello, so I'll be beginning with talking about some challenges or obstacles that many first generation or just Latinx graduate students face in getting here. So the first I wanted to cover was the lack of resources, a really big one being financial. Students tend to have little to no financial support and or help their families financially as well. So there tends to be this added layer of responsibility many students have where they are not receiving support from their families, but actually tend to be a big part of support for theirs. And there's this institutional expectation or understanding that students' #1 priority is school, and that they will receive whatever support that they need financially from outside sources, usually from parents. And this is true not only for graduate level students, but also any Latinx students in higher education. Yeah, and then their role in financially supporting their families is another added layer of responsibility that many other students don't have. So this is just another thing added onto their plates and can be difficult to balance when you've got several other things to prioritize. Another one would be relationships and the lack of role models and or mentors with similar backgrounds in higher education. So I know for me going into this, I didn't have any friends, family, or anybody that had done this before I did. So we're very, very resourceful. And if it's on the internet, we've found it. So just looking to see what kind of process we're getting ourselves into. But for the most part, this is something we figure out on our own, and there's not many people that we can go to or ask for support or questions who have experienced the same thing that that we're getting ourselves into. Yeah, and this is another reason why it's so valuable to have a role model or someone that has navigated this path before us. Since many of us, we're the first in our family, and our goal is to be that person for others in our lives. But it can be difficult as you get higher up in higher education. There are less and less people that look like us. And navigating these systems that aren't built for us is different from how other students navigate these systems. So that's another added layer where it would be really useful to have more role models or mentors. An example I wanted to give was from a summer bridge program that's held at Cal State Fullerton. So it's intended for first generation graduate students. They offer writing workshops, get you familiar with resources on campus, and help provide support and give you like a head start, as that's the goal of the program. But one thing we all noticed is that what would have been really awesome to have would be to have other students that have gone through what we have and hear about their experiences and hear more about what to look out for, some advice and things of that sort. Again, if we've made it this far in higher education, we have used every resource that we possibly can online and through the school as well. So that was really great to know and to review and to have, but also something really valuable that was missing is to speak with other students who have gone through this process and can help answer some questions and make it a little bit less intimidating for us as we learn to navigate this new system. And then again, as I mentioned, with community, getting into higher education, there's not many people with similar backgrounds as us, and the higher up you get, the less of us there are. And we often feel like we have to assimilate or find ways to fit in, to be accepted and to find community. And for me personally, the first time where I got to feel like I could be myself truly and share my experiences and have them be not only understood, respected, valued, and celebrated was in the Animo program. So getting to be with other students who are going through the similar process, who are have the similar background as I do, maybe facing the same obstacles, and understand where I come from. And for the first time, I felt like my identity as a whole was seen, and I was able to create relationships and a community with people who I really connected with. So that's what Animo has done for me on a personal level, not just the training that it's offered me for my professional career. And then another big thing also is time. Like I mentioned, we have many other obligations and responsibilities. Many of us work full-time or part-time in order to support ourselves and or our families. And not only that, but a lot of us also have familial responsibilities. Where we help support our family, and our pillar of support as one of our values is feminismo and collectivism. So we do value our families and spending time with them, and also have added responsibilities at home that many other students don't have. This can lead to us being spread really thin and can make higher education really stressful at times, especially when the institutions that we attend expect us to only prioritize school and to have that be our number one priority and or responsibility. And like I mentioned, these are can interfere with some of our values, since these systems were built on a different value system. And Carla will be discussing in more detail how these difference in values can create some conflict.
Gracias, Leslie. So now that we have learned a little bit about the personal lives, what could be going on in the lives of Latinx students, I want to dive into a little bit of what can be happening or what they can be facing inside the classrooms. So the first thing that I have up there is imposter syndrome. And I'm sure a lot of you have either heard of it or even have felt this before. And so imposter syndrome is just feelings of inadequacy, maybe feelings that you don't belong, maybe it's feelings that you're not good enough, even though all your accomplishments say otherwise. And so it's interesting because imposter syndrome, when we look at the research, we see that imposter imposter syndrome is often seen as a personal flaw rather than a product of systemic and structural oppression. And so for a lot of BIPOC students, and specifically in predominantly white institutions, you can see that there's this cultural incongruity. And so that makes it feel like BIPOC students, it makes it feel like we don't belong there, or we're not meant to be in these spaces. So the research shows that some characteristics in predominantly white institutions can include things like individualism, competition, elitism. And so as you can see, it's completely different from our own cultural values, such as familismo, colectivismo, personalismo, all these cultural values that really signify family, community, unity. And so this cultural incongruity makes it difficult and creates a lot of barriers for Latinx students to continue their educational journey. And it's interesting because when I was looking through this research, something that came up for me was that while I was pursuing my undergraduate degree, I didn't have a lot of community. I really stayed in a silo, and there was no professors, no teachers that looked like me. And I did have some Latinx friends that I made. However, a lot of them ended up dropping out of college. And so really, I went through undergrad alone. And if it wasn't for my family, I probably wouldn't have continued on to my master's degree. I had mentioned earlier of one of my identities. I am a second generation. So I'm also a daughter of immigrants. And so my father was the first one to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And even so, it was him that kept pushing me to keep going. And so I could only imagine students who don't have that, or first generation that don't have, that it's difficult for them either financially, when other responsibilities that they may have. Maybe they don't even have family members that are like, what's going on? What are you doing? You're just spending money doing that. I know that's something my grandmother used to say, or my grandfather rather, would tell my dad that you're wasting money here in your master's. Or and so what I meant, like, overall, what I want to say is that, like, it was a completely different environment when I entered my master's program. Having this animal emphasis, I was surrounded by teachers who looked like me. I was surrounded by students who understood my cultural background, who I didn't have to prove myself to show that I'm here and I'm meant to be here. And so I had the community in my master's program, and again, it honestly pushed me to continue and encouraged me to go on. And so while delving into the research, it showed that majority of students in higher education navigated higher education by code switching. And so what that means is that they detach themselves from their cultural values, their community, and so forth, just to fit in. And I realized that that's what I did in my undergrad. I was just trying to go through. I'm just trying to just get to point A to point B, and that's it. However, it's not surprising that the ways in which Latinx graduate students survive graduate school was consejos, either de otros, familia, profesores. That is a way that the research showed that that's a superpower that a lot of Latinx graduate students had. That's their way of surviving graduate school. So it was building that community that pushed students to continue on. And it was interesting while I was explaining these concepts, or what the research was showing. I had one of my colleagues, Valeria, she's going to be presenting a few slides down. She made a great comment regarding how it's this community building that allows us to continue on. However, it's often the responsibility of the student to seek these communities out, rather than having the schools already having these structures and having these spaces. Especially schools who label themselves as like Hispanic serving institutions. And they aren't labeled Hispanic graduating institutions because majority of graduate students or graduate programs don't have the infrastructures developed to retain and support Latinx graduate students throughout their educational journey. So something else that came up for me was like, so what does this mean for educators and administrators? Well, I think, and the research backs this up as well, that tapping in and celebrating the identities and cultures of BIPOC students, specifically Latinx students, can help nurture that resilience that is already in them. But I know I've been talking for a bit, so now that we talked about the barriers that are happening inside the classrooms, I'll pass it along to my colleague, mi amiga Paola, to continue on.
Gracias, Carla. And since we have reviewed the barriers that bilingual and bicultural trainees face personally and in the classroom, vamos a platicar un poco de los obstáculos que tenemos en práctica during our internship year. According to Verdinelli and Beaver, bilingual and bicultural counselors, especially those in the early stages of development, like myself, desire feedback related to our clinical skills. However, that's not always the case. Thus, it's really important to highlight the barriers of receiving that training as a bilingual bicultural counselor. So the main findings that we found through the research and something that I experienced personally was the lack of bilingual and bicultural supervision, as well as the expectations of as a bilingual and bicultural trainee outside the clinical role. The minimal educational opportunities and resources provided in Espanol. So for example, the lack of culturally responsive treatments that were provided. And lastly, code switching, so not being able to be my full self in that clinical setting with my supervisor and my colleagues in that site. Overall, these barriers highlight the majority of my own practicum experience. There are various moments during my own individual and group supervision that I felt that I could only choose English-speaking clients to present on to receive feedback. For example, there's this one client that I was really excited to show in presentation, but I was asked to translate. Although it's not an issue for me to translate it, it takes more time and effort and energy to translate to make sure everyone else understands. After I did translate some of that session, the feedback that I received in that video didn't feel like it fit that my supervisor or my colleagues in that environment understood the cultural nuances of using my hands, right? Because it was too distracting for my client in that session. But they failed to notice that that was just a cultural part of the way I express myself, especially with the Latina client that I had. And it was also a part of me mirroring the client because they were also speaking through their hands and hand gestures. Moreover, my bilingual skills were celebrated when I would be assigned Spanish-speaking cases, being asked to translate documents, phone calls, sessions for other trainees, and even for house staff when there was no other bilingual person around. However, my bilingual and bicultural identity was uncomfortable for others when asking for feedback and clinical skills. And I know one of the main reasons why I came into this field was to help my community. However, my skills were not being nourished in the way my English counseling skills were, which could be a disservice for the community I did want to serve. So as bilingual and bicultural counselors, we work to reach the underserved populations, such as the Latina community, which is why greater attention to the needs of bilingual and bicultural trainees and supervisors is essential. So now that I spoke a little bit about the barriers in our practicum site, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Valeria to speak a little bit more about the recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Paola. So now that we've outlined some of the challenges we have experienced as students and mental health trainees, we would like to share some recommendations for the training of bilingual bicultural counseling students. Through our review of the literature and different counseling programs in the country, we came to the realization that we don't really have set guidelines for the supervisor and supervisee relationship for bilingual trainees. A lack of these guidelines is what often leads to the overworking of bilingual interns, as they are more likely to have to translate documents or translate for other interns, as shared by my peers in this presentation. Establishing these guidelines should include learning objectives for the supervisees, as we need additional training to work with Latinx Spanish-speaking folks. These guidelines should also include addressing bilingual counseling in the training to better support trainees in this area. It's not just it's not just like the knowing the language, but also addressing how to use language in the counseling session or how to communicate with our community in session with our clients. Seto and Forth found that supervision for bilingual trainees is more effective when the supervisor speaks the same language that the counselors use with their clients in session. Despite this being a positive finding, it's also important to have a supervisor who has the cultural knowledge of the population. Like Dr. Mejia mentioned earlier, being from the culture and speaking the language does not necessarily mean that the person knows how to serve the population, which shows why bilingual bicultural training is important. I personally had a bilingual bicultural supervisor in practicum, and she was also from the same background, was Latina. I served a lot of Latinx clients in practicum, and a lot of our conversations were lacking the incorporation of the Latinx values that we discussed, like familismo, personalismo, and colectivismo, when addressing the needs of the clients. So I think that just goes to show how even her training, despite coming from the same community, having this Western traditional approach to counseling was still something that she would rely on rather than the values that she grew up in. Most of those values that were brought to the table were from other animal students within the same practicum site. So it shows how our training has helped us think of these values like automatically when working with Latinx folks. It's something that we always consider because it's important to, how they navigate the world, how they see things compared to other clients who may come from an individualistic background. And another recommendation that we have is compensation for bilingual work. Like other peers mentioned with their experiences, some were asked to translate or to step in to a session and translate for another trainee without receiving that financial or clinical hour compensation. By compensating the bilingual work of the trainee, you're also honoring the work that they're doing and not just utilizing when the site sees fit. But also showing that the work is important because they have those additional skills that maybe other trainees do not have. And our final recommendation is developing training programs that better prepare students like the one that we're part of. And I'm really proud of being part of the animal emphasis. It's really helped me prepare to work with my community. I do come from a Latinx background, but always thinking of the cultural values that I hold and that my clients hold is really important when working with them in sessions. And it has really helped me empower myself through my identity as a counselor. And Tamara will go ahead and share a bit more about our program and how that has impacted our identities as Latinos, bilingual, bicultural students in clinical.
Thank you, Valeria. There are a lot of obstacles, systemic and otherwise, that deter Latinos from pursuing higher education. And as we've heard throughout the presentation, these challenges continue even after we enter these spaces, and they're often heightened when we continue on to grad programs. And that's really where Animo comes in. This emphasis, which I would describe as a community, really fills this this much needed role in the lives of Latina grad students. And the reason why I say lives is because its impact is felt beyond the classroom setting. That's been my experience. Although I will be touching on how it's impacted classroom settings. So for this first bullet point, a reliable support system, I've really found that I can rely on the people in this emphasis. My community, my family has little to no knowledge on how grad school really works. So I didn't know how to navigate it. And I really found myself tapping into this network. I check in with the people in the emphasis, they check in with me. We keep each other up to date on educational resources, on assignments, important deadlines. If someone doesn't come to class, we check in on them, see how they're doing. Different things like that have really been instrumental to me doing well in this program. And the next point on here, representation. There's a reason why we're always hearing about why representation matters. There's something powerful about being able to see yourself reflected in your surroundings and professors and students. It's a really validating experience to have people who look like you in these positions. it's motivating, it's assuring, and I've really found that it created this sense of belonging, safety, and inclusion that is really necessary in this kind of environment. And this next point out, transparency from professors. I found that the professors in the emphasis, they've really made it a point to be transparent with us about things that aren't really talked about, right? They address the elephant in the room, whether that's racism, classism, inequity, microaggressions. So they really have helped create this space where we are able to have this open dialogue about these topics that are often pushed under the rug. And presumed competence. In animal classes, I don't really feel like I need to prove myself, which isn't necessarily the case. In other classes, it wasn't the case in my experience in undergrad or even other classes within the program. I feel that as a Latina woman, there's often this hyper awareness around what it is that I'm going to say. It's very almost calculated when I'm in certain spaces because I worry about how I'm going to be perceived by other people because of my identity. There's this monitoring that happens in some of these spaces. But when I'm in animal classes, I don't feel that way. I feel like everyone already knows why I'm there. There's, again, this presumed confidence. There's a reason why I'm there. I've already earned my place here. I don't need to continue to prove myself. And that really has helped me feel more empowered and has boosted my self-esteem. And how I felt empowered through animal and professional settings is advocating for myself and for my clients. I feel that professors have really modeled to us this that advocacy. I've had them advocate for me in many cases, and they've really showed how to go about that and made me feel comfortable doing that for myself and, like I mentioned, for clients that I've had. An example was at my setting there, at my practicum setting that I was at, there's a limit of 12 sessions. A lot of the clients that came in were low income, long history of traumas, ongoing trauma, past trauma. And so they would disclose something to me maybe in the 8th session, very close to the end of the sessions. And I knew that there was no way that that it would be ethical for me to terminate with the client after 12 sessions based on what they had shared to me based on the timeline. But in speaking with professors and just taking into account all of the knowledge that I've received through this program, I was able to feel comfortable and confident enough to address this with my site. And I was able to get additional sessions for several of my clients. Again, falling in line with that, there's increased confidence that I felt when working with these clients. As Dr. Mejia has mentioned, the fact that someone is bilingual or bicultural doesn't necessarily mean that they have the abilities or skills to work with a population. And that's really what Animo has done. It's helped me hone those skills. And it's helped me be able to identify and implement culturally relevant interventions as well. And in learning how to work with the Latino population and again, provide these culturally relevant interventions, that knowledge is transferable when working with clients from other diverse backgrounds. And to this last point here, it's really been great being in this program and being told, that people believe in you. You're encouraged to pursue a doctorate, to pursue more leadership positions. And yeah, so I think it's really important to have programs like this, all these things, are things not just that I've experienced, but that I've had conversations about with other peers as well. And through this program, I really thought that it's created this space where my identity, my values, my background, they're not just tolerated, but they're celebrated. And I've found like through this community, again, that sense of belonging, safety, and I found that my identity as a Latina has been solidified. And I think the same can be said for many other students in the program. And I think that really that's why it was such a natural shift from this just being an emphasis within a counseling program to it being a community, because there was that need for connection, that need for understanding, that need to be seen, that was really met through anyone. And I can genuinely say that I would not be here today presenting 3 years into this program, about to graduate, without anyone. And just to speak a little bit more to the program, like of course the ability to expand my knowledge and skills in working with the Latina community and providing them with relevant, accessible, and quality treatment that they're often not met with is what drew me into the counseling program at Cal State Fullerton. The animal emphasis is really the main reason why I applied to Cal State Fullerton. That's what drew me in, but everything listed on the slide is what has kept me here. And you know, the animal program isn't going to get rid of all of these systemic issues, but what it does do is help mitigate the negative impact of being in this new, often unfamiliar environment that wasn't built with this in mind. And what I've really found is that it reminds us that we're not just an afterthought, but that we are the conversation.
I got so caught up in what you were saying, Tamara. I couldn't find the unmute button. Thank you. Thank you for what you're what you all are sharing. So let's see, we have a time for a Q&A, and also, you know, one is the, we have the references there, so I wanted you to see that, but I want to stop sharing so we can all come back together. And I think there's been a few things in the chat. You know, we've been kind of talking at you a bit because we wanted to be sure that you heard what we have to share, but really want to open it up. And please put stuff in the chat or unmute yourself. You know, at the beginning of the presentation, I encouraged you to, you know, take deep breaths and notice your thoughts, your reactions, your feelings to what we were going to be sharing with you and what we've shared with you. So cuéntenos que, you know, what questions, what comments, what's coming up for you? How are you connecting to what we're sharing with you?
I think hi, my name is Diana Munoz. I just actually graduated from a counseling program in Kansas.
Felicidades.
And thank you. And like all of the experiences, I think I said in the chat too, like everything they've said has been part of my experience as a counselor going through my program as well. And not necessarily that, I think it was more so because we're not yet a Hispanic serving institution. We have like strategic planning for all of these things, but we're such a high volume of Hispanic speaking people and Hispanic people from all different backgrounds. We have so many students from Colombia and like other places that really don't get the light that they need. And just seeing that it's capable of happening at another university is just very inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, you're welcome, Diana. And yes, to all of what you're saying, I think that, you know, we have animal, but this should be everywhere, right? Like I looked it up. I think master's level public KCRIB accredited, which the counseling department is. Animo is one of 2 programs that I could find in my research doing this work in all of the US. That really should not make sense to anyone because it doesn't. And yet that's the reality. Yeah. ¿Qué más? Cuéntenos. Hablen con nosotros, con nosotras. Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
Dr. Salazar. I'm from Corpus Christi, Texas. And obviously I'm a fan because I've been blowing y'all up in the chat all afternoon. Such a fan to see so many women with you, Dr. Mejia, who are not doctors yet.
Todavía. Ya casi.
Yet. Because y'all are already leaders. And my dissertation focused on the lack of support for Latinos in higher education, specifically in counselor education, because there is none.
Yeah.
Very, very, very little. We have to create it for ourselves. Not only the safe spaces, but the brave spaces. So to be brave and to publish this work and to move forward with it. I'm exhausted because I just finished last year, but y'all have reinvigorated me.
Oh, felicidades. Come join us.
Don't tempt me with a good time. Although I don't know, if I get fired soon, I might have to come.
We have positions open. We should talk.
I love this program. I've been trying to implement some pieces of this. I supervise. I'm an LPC supervisor in Texas, so it's a little bit different format than California, but it's trying to implement it and hitting roadblocks and systemic barriers. But the more we talk about the systemic barriers, the less that they can push them on us.
Yeah.
Because we're acknowledging them. So thank you for acknowledging all of that and to be brave and to put all that out there, because it's hard to share. It's easier when you're among company, like in a format like this. So I want to encourage all the ladies who are not already doctors yet to keep putting it out there in places that are not safe, so that they can hear your voices too, because your voices are wonderful. That's it.
Gracias, Dr. Salazari, for your comments. Fills my heart for what you're sharing. Yeah. ¿Qué más? Jump in and unmute yourself, or.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry. Go ahead.
Let's see, we have either Emilia or Dr. Pepe. Who wants to go?
I just wanted to say thank you. I'm a bilingual counselor in Dallas, Texas, and I teach here locally. And I've been trying to start a program like what you're saying. Your program's ideal, and it's just so frustrating trying to convince monolingual people that do not understand the language and do not understand the culture, and trying to.
Oh, did we lose Dr. Pepe? Yes. Yeah. Creo que ya no se escuchó. Did you all?
Lesson.
There you are.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
I
think we keep losing him, yeah? All right, maybe as Dr. Pepe figures out, Emilia, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, hi, my name's Emilia.
I
am a I'm a go ahead. Nope.
Oh, sorry, Emilia, go ahead.
Okay, I'm in my last semester.
I think the sound
mental health counseling program at Bowie State. Experience has been unique because of that. I have my perspective as a bicultural student. Me oyen, sorry. No sé si me pueden oír, but I think the question I want to ask is twofold. One, the solution. You guys kind of really eloquently laid out the problem, and in your minds, I'd love to hear multiple people's thoughts about, is the solution to duplicate Animo? Love the name, love it, but in other institutions, is there something wider? And then my second question is a frustration that I have about the field is what I have kind of deemed like the teaching of bias about Latinos, and like we're all a monolith. Latino has become synonymous with like immigration issues and things like that. And And I feel very passionate about correcting this. And in class, I'm always talking about this. I'm usually like one of two Latinos in my class. My professors are super open, but have you guys experienced this frustration? And what do you feel like is the solution to correcting this perception in counseling?
Yeah, thank you, Emilia. Thank you for your questions. Just mindful of time. I think we have until 11:50, so I'll keep talking, but I know that some people might need to log off. Know that we're available, Cal State Fullerton, Animo. You have the information, and hopefully we made the PDFs available to you all. But I'll say in terms of, Emilia, your questions, absolutely. Let's duplicate and modify and adapt programs like Animo for other Latinx communities, other universities, other, whether it's in California, it's in Texas, it's in Florida, it's in Nueva York, it's in Georgia, whatever it might be. We are on a journal article, so please look for that to kind of help tell our Animo story, and then encourage others to duplicate programs to your environment, but also not just Latinx, right? Like more locally for us, like we could have a similar program for Vietnamese community, right? Or other communities. So for sure, we need more programs, but we need to get funded, right? Like that's where it needs to start, is we need to get support infrastructure within the universities for that to happen. In terms of, if I understood your question correctly, right, that absolutely, right, that Latinx, Latine, Latino, Latina, right, that as if we were all the same. And I know one of the things that I talk a lot about within Animo is intersectionality, right, that sí compartimos esta parte de nuestra cultura, right? But we're also our genders, we're our sexual affectual orientation, we're our religion, our gender identity, right? Somos todo eso, race, right? We're all different. Colorism is such a big deal, right? So for sure, I really create a lot of space for even the ways that we speak Espanol, or whether we speak Espanol or not, right? I'm totally about Spanglish, and I really try to take the shame out of any of those identities. And so how do we do that? God, it starts somewhere, right? For me, it's like start with students in Animo. If they can know it as they move into the profession, they'll be able, right, as their directors and supervisors and professors, that they can share that information with others. And, I think as Dr. Salazar was saying, be brave and stand up and, say it. No, es que no es así. Let me, that this is how it is. So, I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in for some last comments, because I know we're out of time.
I think I just want to say gracias a todos ustedes for being in community with us. Hopefully in the future, we all become doctoras and we are changing systems and supporting other students. But thank you all for just being here and validating, for me personally, validating our feelings in the chat. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Sí, muchas gracias. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your comments, your emojis, todo lo demás. Muchas gracias. Qué gusto conocerles, even if it was on Zoom.